Episode 48 is all about Lightroom. I discuss Lightroom cataloging, when to delete your raw files, and what do the sliders in the split toning panel do. Episode 48 starts now. Hi everybody, my name is Gerry, I'm from Wild Eye, and this is episode number 48 of the Wildlife Photography Q&A video series in which I answer your wildlife related questions. Hi everybody, my name is Gerry, I'm from Wild Eye, and this is episode number 48 of my Wildlife Photography Q&A video series in which I answer your wildlife photography related questions. Yes, it has been a while. The last few weeks have been pretty insane with travel and office and kind of planning new webs, everything. It's just been an amazingly busy time, which is phenomenal. And in 2 weeks' time, our safari season kicks off, which means from July, well, put it this way, yesterday we had a quick coffee in the office, and it's the last time until I think end October, beginning November, before the whole team is together again. That's the amount of travel we have coming up. It's great. I'm off to Zambia and Zimbabwe and then Kenya in 2 weeks' time. And then for the next 3 months, it's on the run all the time. Just love it. So, a while ago, I asked for your Lightroom-related question when it comes to wildlife photography, and I've jumped back to that post on Instagram, and I'm going to try and delve into some interesting questions. I've picked a couple here regarding to, and a lot of it's around the cataloging side of Lightroom. Now, for those of you that have been following along, first of all, thank you very much, and number two, you'll know that I'm very big on not going with a recipe-driven workflow, as in, you've imported your image into Lightroom, and now you're going to start processing that image. People ask about presets, and what presets should I use for this, for that, for developing. It doesn't work. You see, with a recipe-driven approach to the processing side of Lightroom, I feel you're going to lose, because every image has to be processed on merit. You have to kind of look at what the image needs and process accordingly to get what you have in your raw file to your final vision. So a recipe-driven processing workflow doesn't work. However, when we look at the other very important and almost more important part of Lightroom is the cataloging side of things. And there, once you find a process that works for you, once you find a recipe that works for you, it can very well be recipe-driven. Because all that the first part, that library module does in Lightroom is it takes images from a memory card or from a hard drive and imports them into Lightroom. The cataloging, the searching, the keywording, the rating, the labeling, and so on. Once you find your recipe for that part of it, it can work. So a lot of the time, and we found this, and I said this previously as well, a lot of our one-on-ones we've done at the office the last while wasn't to do with the processing side of it. The processing side of Lightroom, that's the sexy part, that's the fun part. It's the cataloging that a lot of people do not understand. And it's shocking how many people who think they do and who start teaching other people to do it have no idea what the hell they're doing. So the questions I chose, there's one or two on split toning, which I found a nice creative kind of end, so we'll end off on that one. But a lot of the other questions, the next four, has to do with cataloging inside of Lightroom. So it is a difficult concept to do like this, where it's almost a one-way thing. So I need comments. Guys, if you have any feedback or comments on this, hit me up on my various social platforms, details at the end of the video, and I'll try and assist where I can. Anyway, so with that, episode 48 of Wildlife Photography Q&A starts now. Let's look at Lightroom.
Joni asks on Instagram, how do you create a catalog from the time you put your SD card into the computer, save it in Lightroom and into a folder? Once you have it in the final order, can your catalog stay in Lightroom if you want to work on images again? How many catalogs can you keep in Lightroom?
Okay, Joni, this question cuts down to the very, very basic of the library module inside of Lightroom. Now, if you look on the left-hand tab of your screen, you'll see there's these three. You've got catalog, folders, and collections, right? Lightroom, when you open Lightroom, Lightroom has to work off a catalog. So I can, for example, let me try and do this. I can, for example, create a catalog called Wildlife, Gerry's Wildlife. Yes? I can then create another catalog called Gerry's Travel Photography. Yeah? Lightroom cannot access those at the same time. So when you're creating, for example, a brand new catalog for, argument's sake, Wildlife Photography 2016, and all your 2016 images will go inside that catalog. Yes? So when you open Lightroom, Lightroom opens that catalog for you, and that's the one it works on. If you have images that are, for example, in Wildlife Photography 2015, a separate catalog, you cannot see both of them in Lightroom at the same time. So a catalog is the very top level of Lightroom organization. That is where, think of it as a photo album, yeah? So you've got 3 photo albums. The one is called Children, Travel, and Wildlife. You can't look at all 3 at the same time. You can open the Wildlife catalog album and look at those images. You have to close it and open the next one to look at travel. You have to close it and open to look at the next one. Catalogs works in the same way. Now, way back, I had 3 catalogs that I worked off. It was wildlife, it was weddings, and it was lodges and hospitality. Because when I was working in my one genre, wildlife, I didn't want to have to see lion, leopard, elephant, rhino, bride, hotel room. I wanted to separate based on content. So I would create wildlife photography master catalog. Any wildlife I did, I would open that catalog, import the images into there, and when I did a hotel shoot or a lodge shoot and I wanted to import those images, I would close my wildlife photography catalog, I would open my lodge and hospitality catalog and import the images into there. Catalog is the very top level. Again, think of it as a photo album with one type of content. Now, the easiest way, and I'll screen grab, I'll put it up on the side here for you now, is you don't want to create a new catalog for every single trip that you do or destination that you do. It's not necessary. The levels, and Joni, I know for you because on Big Catch we discussed some of this, is you don't want to create a new catalog for every single day or even for every destination. You could have one catalog, they can run into hundreds of thousands of images, so don't worry about having too many images in there. But you want to have one catalog into which you import, ready for this, folders, different folders. So inside of a catalog, yes, a catalog is the Lightroom album. Inside of the catalog, you have folders. A folder is where your raw files live on your hard drive. I'm going to say it again. A folder is where your raw files live on your hard drive. Yeah? Images do not live inside of Lightroom. They don't live in a catalog. Catalog is just a collection of folders into which you have imported a bunch of images. You see, concept is not difficult, but you need to kind of just stick with this. So when you're importing off an SD card, you have to, number one, open up a Lightroom catalog, pre-existing more than likely. Yeah. When you then import, you can then tell Lightroom into which folders those images have to go. That's up to you to do. You can do this according to destination, date. You can put them all into one. It doesn't matter because you can filter them inside of Lightroom anyway later on. Okay, so if you have Lightroom catalog open, you go import, you choose the destination. That destination is the folder. That on your computer is where the raw files live. Let's say, for example, you already have a folder with raw files on your computer and you don't want to bring them into Lightroom. Nothing changes. Once you've got the images inside of Lightroom, those raw files are a part of the catalog, but they live in a folder. Separate but related. Making sense? The last step of the process is collections. And Lightroom tells it, again, look, it's catalogs, it's folders, it's collections. Catalog, big picture, all of your images. Folders, where the raw files live. And then a collection, and it's funny, collection is the most powerful thing when it comes to not processing, damn it, Gerry, focus. Speaking too fast, need coffee still. So a collection is the most phenomenal way to organize your images inside of the Lightroom library module. For me, the folder is all my raw files. That's the shoot I've done. My entire Mara safari or my Svalbard safari goes into the folder, which is a part of the catalog. Once I've finished processing and selecting my images outside of my folder, I add them into a collection. Now, they don't live in the collection. That's just a mark. That's just saying, put this one, reference them into that collection. The nice thing there is, if you've been to the Chobe and you've shot 2,000 raw files, images during your trip, let's try again. So those 2,000 files live in a folder, which is a part of the bigger catalog. When I come to visit you for a cup of coffee to show me your images from the Chobe, please God, don't show me all 2,000. You're going to show me your final processed images, which are part of a collection. A collection can then be called, for example, Best of Chobe, and there's only 20 images in which is finally processed and ready to go. Now, Joni, I know you and I, we've done some FaceTimes, we've spoken about this, but go and watch this last, however long is this, 4 minutes, I don't know. Check it again and work through it slowly. I'm going to recap one more time. The top level of any Lightroom library is the catalog. That is the collection of folders inside of which your raw files live. When you do a new trip, you add the images into a new folder, which then gets added into the catalog. And once you finish processing the images, the ones you choose and are going to use, that ends up in a collection named Best of Destination, for example. I hope that helps. You guys have my email and stuff. I know this is hard to dig into. Give it a bash and tell me if you have any more questions.
Joni asks on Instagram, how can you have Lightroom recognize previous files that you have so that you can edit photos and put watermarks on them?
I decided to put this one in because it links nicely to the previous one. I mentioned there that if you have images that are already on a hard drive, for Lightroom to recognize them, you just have to import them into Lightroom. You can either import into Lightroom off a memory card, off a phone, directly from camera, or from pre-existing folders. So if you have images that are already existing, import them into Lightroom and it will there, through that process, recognize those files.
Snap Happy Photographer asked on Instagram, been burning on this question for a while. I know keeping images in Lightroom is a must, as you might come across a few you would like to edit in the future. But if you know for a fact you won't use them again, do you remove them or do you keep all the images in Lightroom?
Really cool question here, because a lot of people sit on raw files that they're never going to use anymore, but it's this thing about, shit, what if one day I have a child? No. So I don't keep all my raw files. The process that I use for this and that I kind of recommend to people on Safari is when you're out in the field, when you're doing that shoot, that children's party, that wedding, whatever it is, the moment you finish, now for me on Safari, I try and do it every night, but being with guests, I don't have the time. So normally when I get home, I will go from the entire 200, 2000, whatever images, from the start to the end, I will go through and I'll flag the immediate rejects. Those are the ones that are out of focus, I've chopped off the lion's nose, and they are just terrible. X them, which is a reject, and get rid of them. Then you're left with all good, relatively good raw files. Out of those, I might have 1,000 left. Not all of them are hero shots. Now this is at this point where you have to decide for yourself. I will go and I will add the ones that I like from a previous question. I will go and add them into a collection, and those become my hero shots. Yeah. Now for me, I've got different levels of image use. My collections, for example, will become, they go onto my website as galleries. If anybody asks for, I don't know, a publication, a print, whatever, those will come from there. I then also have other content. So my levels from there down would be, I might have blog content because I write blogs based on education and trying to teach people stuff. I will use I want to call them inferior, but not the level 1, the level 2 images for blog posts, because I can say this went wrong, that went wrong. Below that, I might have ones that can work for social media. You can get away with a lot on Instagram from an image sharpness and quality point of view because the dimensions are much smaller. So I might use those to put onto my social platforms. Anything under that I'm not going to use, I could very well delete. And yes, on a trip, just after the fact, be brutal. If you have 4 of the same images, maybe keep 1, maybe 2 if there's a slight difference. Don't keep all of them. So if you can get rid of your raw files, do it. That said, if you're very panicky and nervous, oh my God, I might use this one, I don't. It's up to you. It's a very personal thing. But I believe that the harsher you are, criticizing and breaking down your images to what's good and what's not, I think it's a very good learning exercise to leave you with good images, but also a different eye because you've looked critically at those images. So I'm all in favor of ranking your images, get rid of the bad ones, work on the good ones.
Sandra asked on Instagram, how can you use the edits you've made in the field on your laptop in Lightroom on your iMac? Do you have to copy the catalog, and will all your changes be visible and still editable?
Okay, this is a very important question for people who do 2 things. Number 1, that travel often, and number 2, try and edit their Lightroom images, their Lightroom catalog on different computers. So I'm going to tell you how mine works because I think it'll work for you as well. I've got 3 computers. I've got my desktop at the office. I've got my big iMac at home, and I've got a laptop that I travel with. Now, you have to set up your Lightroom catalog. Remember from the first question, we said the Lightroom catalog is the main file that Lightroom accesses. Yeah? So the images and Lightroom catalog are two separate things. They don't live in the same place. Why won't they live in the same place? Because you've got one point of failure then. If anything goes wrong, something's going to break. Again, remember, you've got two types of hard drives in this world. Broken ones and those that are going to break. It's just one of those things. So therefore, you don't want to keep your Lightroom catalog and your raw files on the same drive. Now, when you're traveling, I would suggest that you travel with two external hard drives. They're small. Come on, it's not difficult. So when you're in the field, you create yourself or you copy your Lightroom catalog file, the .lrcat folder, onto one hard drive. That hard drive becomes your Lightroom catalog drive. Nothing else lives on there, just your Lightroom catalog. Your raw files then get put on an external hard drive, a second one. Now, you can then carry on in the field. When you import, you open your Lightroom catalog from this hard drive, you import your raw files to this hard drive, and then when you get home, you take both of them and plug them into your Mac, iMac, whatever it is, and open Lightroom off this catalog, and it'll be exactly the same. Does that make sense? The nice thing for me, I've got one little hard drive, a little black guy, covered with a little black neoprene. That is my Lightroom catalog drive. There's nothing else on there. I can take that because all the changes you make, the labels you do, the cropping, every single adjustment you make to those images gets saved on that external hard drive. I can take that and plug it into any computer in the world and access my catalog. I can sit in Masai Mara 2 months from now and edit Svalbard images of polar bears from 3 years ago because I have all my images on that catalog. In the meantime, my raw files are safe at home. So, backtrack a bit. When you're in the field, you've got your Lightroom catalog hard drive, you've got your raw file hard drive, both plugged in. You import, raw files go here, the catalog gets updated with whatever changes you make. When you get home, you plug your Lightroom catalog into your iMac, you plug your raw files into your iMac. You carry on working as if nothing's wrong. You now make a backup of this onto a separate drive, which is your second backup of your raw files. Simple as that. Once you've backed up, you've created your smart previews, your one-to-one previews, everything, you unplug both of them and you carry on. Whenever you want to work on your Lightroom, you just make sure that you've got your external Lightroom catalog plugged in and you're good to go. It's one that came up or comes up quite regularly now with more and more people traveling with laptops and wanting to process in the field. Put your Lightroom catalog on an external hard drive and make that the one that drives the process.
Deji asked on Instagram, split toning, whys and hows. Dan asked on Instagram, the how of sepia, but more importantly, the why and when. What types of images work with sepia conversions?
Okay, Deji and Dan. Sounds like a TV program. Anyway, I've decided to combine those two because obviously very similar in style. Now, you know what the best thing is about this question? Is you're asking why and how. And I've said this again and again. The how of anything in photography is a piece of piss. That's very easy. Yep. How do I crop? Oh, you hit this and you move the thing. How do I change exposure? You slide this bar up and down. How do I use split toning? I'll show you in a second. The more important question and the more interesting question is why. The why of, and I did a blog a while ago called the why of cropping. Why should you crop in portrait or landscape orientation? The why is almost more important than the how, but too many people out there focus just on the how, and that's why their images and their photography get stale. Little rabbit hole, I'm going to get out and carry on. So, split toning, the why and how. Let's talk why in a second first, and then I'm going to just do an insert here while I run you through the basics of split toning, the how. Why would you do it? Split toning, you can go and get carried away. So remember, I'm a wildlife photography camp. That's where I come from. If you're working in different genres where you have a very creative, what's the word I'm looking for? When you have creative say over the content. Remember, as wildlife photographers, and I hope you're on the same page, our idea is to represent nature naturally, to document history, natural history. Yeah, I'm not going to go and change and make an elephant blue and then say that's nature. I can call it art, but that's a different genre. So split toning, you can take, it's got highlights and it's got shadows. You can go and add a specific color tone to the darks or the light areas of those images. Now, in color images, it can be quite a challenge, but you can add, for example, if you've got a background that's quite dark, you can add a slight orange tone to try and warm it up. I've seen people do it. It's nice. I think it's a waste of time. The biggest thing where split toning comes in is when you create, and that's where Dan's question comes in, when you start creating sepia images. The basic of it is that you then choose sepia on your color scale, and you'll see this now what I did, is around about the 40 to 50 mark from a saturation point of view on the slider in the sepia slider panel, on the saturation slider inside the sepia panel, yeah? And then you choose whether you want to affect the darker areas with that color or the lighter areas with this color. Let me show you how it works. Right, we're going to be looking at split toning using this monochrome image because, like I mentioned, it's easier to see the results and to create a stronger image from monochrome rather than to try and mess with the color scales. So if you go into the develop module, you'll see the split toning panel on the right hand side. Click on that and you get the drop down menu. Now there's two sections to this. There's highlights and there's shadows. And you'll see they both have the same sliders, hue and saturation. Between the two of them, there's the balance slider, which we'll use at the end. So, like we mentioned, the simplest thing here to do, if you're looking for the sepia tint, and Deji, Dan, this is what you guys were asking, take the hue up to around about a 45, between 40 and 50. So, over there. I'm going to do just highlights for now, which means that results I'm getting, this type of color tone will only be applied or will more heavily be applied towards the brighter areas of the image. Once I've set my color tone, I choose the saturation and now I bump it up to whichever intensity I want. Yeah? So you can immediately see if I go to about a 30 to 40 on my saturation, you immediately get that sepia tone feel, that old school, that authentic feel. Now, if I do the same thing, I'm going to back this off to 0. I'm going to put the same kind of tone onto my dark areas. When I do saturation here now, it gets applied more intensely to the dark areas. Now you can decide, this is a trial and error where you can do both and then you swing the balance side to side. You'll see it changes very slightly as to whether the tones are applied to the highlights or the shadows of the image. That's pretty much how you create a sepia image and use the split toning. You can go, let's see if we can get an exact idea of split toning. I can, for example, select, let's go purple and like a green, yeah? And if I take them both up all the way, and now I can see, so that, what you see on screen now, that is the definition of split toning. You got two tones, duotone. The greens are applied to the darker areas, the purples are applied to the highlighted areas. If this is your thing, good luck. I think it's quite psychedelic, like you've taken drugs, but the sepia toning is where this really comes into itself, is if you're playing between that 40 and 50 on your hue, and then the saturation is where you decide the intensity of the final result. It's a simple process to do. First, you need a black and white image because I said we're not going to do the color version, it just gets messy. And then you can apply a certain color cast, as in a sepia color, that browny, orangey yellow, to either the bright or the dark areas. Why do we want to do sepia? I think there's this psychological thing that if you look at images of the old days from many, many moons ago, there was always, because they got old, how they were processed, they had this brown tint. It makes us feel nostalgic. It makes us feel, oh my goodness, I remember this time, but I wasn't even there type vibe, yeah? So by doing it as a sepia, you're immediately giving me, or you're trying to give your viewer, the feeling of authenticity, of old, of maybe old becomes valuable, old becomes nostalgic. So you're trying to influence the viewer psychologically by adding that kind of sepia tint to it, because that's where it came from. It's from the old days. It could go down the road of a lot of people do prints and they go for the sepia vibe, and I think because of that reason, just remember that if you turn an image into black and white or monochrome and you add a sepia tint, it doesn't immediately make it a sepia, a fine art image. If you take a shitty image, you turn it to black and white and add a sepia tint to it, it's just going to be a shitty sepia image. It doesn't matter. What images work, the image itself has to still stand up and be strong enough on content, on composition, on feeling, on mood, on emotion, on the narrative. All of those things still have to apply. And then you just add the sepia tint if it enhances the feeling. For example, if I get this beautiful open scene of the Masai Mara, massive open land, there's a couple of dotted trees and a small elephant somewhere, and I want to try and make it look like it's many moons ago in Africa, like the old Africa we all missed and loved, whatever, I can then go for a sepia tint because the feeling I'm introducing with that sepia tint kind of underlines the content and the narrative I'm trying to give my viewer. Does that make any sense? That's when I would go for it. Look, the nice thing with Lightroom is you've got test drive. You can test it forward and back and try it, but don't just do it for the sake of trying to save an image because that's just not going to work. It's not going to work. Anyway, so that would be sepia, how and why. Lots more to discuss. Go and check out the Wild Eye blog. I'll put the link here. There's a lot of content on there, and I think I have touched on some of these things in the past as well. Right, Lightroom episode done. Guys, like I said in the beginning, it is a tough one. It's a very tough one to discuss concepts like that without having on the screen, but I do think it's broken down to a basic level for you to start digging into it. And then if you still have questions, you know what to do. Drop me an email, hit me up on the social channels, and let's dig even deeper into this. For those of you just where this one came from as well, all these questions, this was on Instagram. Last night, so what is today? I don't even know, Tuesday. Monday night on my Snapchat story, I went through a whole bunch of my favorite Lightroom keyboard shortcuts. Now, for those of you that are not on Snapchat yet, I know it's for the kids, you don't understand it, you're wrong on both occasions. It is a most phenomenal storytelling platform, and it's the future of where a lot of what we are doing is going. Get on there, go and check it out. It's phenomenal, it's fun, there's cool filters, but from what I'm doing here, this education side of it, the sharing experiences from the field, the live video content, it is absolutely phenomenal. Really check it out and hook me up. If you do follow me on Snapchat and you came from one of these videos, let me know. Hit me up with a snap and say, I saw your video, that's why I'm here. It'd be very cool to find out. Right, that's episode 48 is a wrap. I've got 2 more to go in this, 49 and 50. I'm going to try and get these done before I leave for Zambia in 2 weeks' time. And more than likely, number 50 is going to be the last one, but I have something lined up for afterwards when I get back. Exciting stuff in the pipeline. So for now, I need questions for 2 more episodes of the Wildlife Photography Q&A. Details of how to ask them, end of this video, and hopefully before next week, the 1st of July, I'll get those out for you as well. Anyway, thank you so much for following. Keep the questions coming, and I will chat to you guys online. My name is Gerry. I'm from Wild Eye. I'll see you guys next time.